She hadn't expected the dizzy spell to turn into a collapse, not at her own gallery opening. One minute she was accepting compliments. The next she woke up under fluorescent lights, her body weak, but her mind alert. The first voice she heard was steady, low, and kind. "You're going to be all right, Miss Monroe." She blinked into focus and found him, Dr. Ethan Cole. Tall, calm, eyes like winter skies. He introduced himself with the professional ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, but there was something in the way he looked at her that felt personal. She didn't know what it was, but it pulled her in before she even knew his first name. The diagnosis was manageable: stress, exhaustion, a minor arrhythmia. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to pause her life. She insisted she was fine, but Ethan recommended observation. She didn't argue. Maybe it was the gentle confidence in his voice, or the rare sense of safety she felt. They talked. Not just medical questions, real conversation. She told him about her gallery, her love for art, her fear of slowing down. He listened. Really listened. She caught him smiling when she spoke about a painting that had made her cry as a child. He shared, too. He had grown up in New York, moved to California for a fresh start. No further detail, but she didn't press. On her third day in recovery, he came to check on her during his break. Not in scrubs, just a sweater and jeans. He sat beside her, and she noticed how young he looked when he wasn't the doctor. She asked if he ever painted. He said no, but he'd always admired those who could. She told him he had the hands of someone careful, and he looked down at them like he wasn't sure what to do with the compliment. Silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable. She watched him, and for a moment, it was easy to forget the four in her arm, the beeping machines, the sterile walls. He made her feel like a person, not a patient. When she was discharged, she found herself hesitating at the exit. She turned back once. He wasn't there. But when she got home, a handwritten note was tucked in the discharge folder. "Don't rush back into life. Let it wait for you a little. EC." Her heart beat a little harder, not from fear, but something warm and unfamiliar. She folded the note and placed it between the pages of her favorite book. Something had started, and though she didn't understand it yet, she knew it was more than chance. Lila returned to the hospital 2 weeks later, claiming she had a question about her medication. Ethan saw through it immediately, but didn't call her out. He offered her coffee instead. That was the start. Unofficial, quiet, unspoken. They began meeting outside the hospital. Walks through Griffith Park. Coffee near her gallery. Conversations that lingered too long. He never crossed a line, not at first. But the line kept moving. He warned her subtly. "I'm not good at this. I stay away from complicated." She smiled and said, "Maybe I'm not complicated." But they both knew that wasn't true. She was healing in more ways than one, and he was trying not to fall again. Still, he let her in. He'd walk her home sometimes. She'd offer wine. He'd decline but stay longer than he meant to. They talked about books, fears, dreams. She found him fascinating, not because of his title, but because he carried silence like a burden. He never spoke about his past. When she asked about previous relationships, he dodged. "We all have our regrets," was all he ever said. One night, he kissed her. It wasn't dramatic, just quiet, inevitable. From then on, they were something undefined but real. She didn't tell her friends. He didn't tell his colleagues. It felt like a secret, but not a shameful one. Just something too delicate to name. Then the messages started. He'd glance at his phone mid-conversation and go blank. She noticed, but said nothing at first. One evening, while he showered at her place, his phone buzzed. The message preview said, "You made a promise." She didn't open it, just stared until the screen went dark. She didn't confront him. Instead, she watched. He became distracted, smiled less, answered questions with half-thoughts. She asked if he was all right. He said work was stressful. She didn't believe him, but she wanted to. She invited him to a small gallery event. He didn't show. Sent a 2-line apology 2 hours late. No call. Just silence. When she asked if something had changed, he said, "No, I'm just tired." but the space between them was growing. Lila tried to hold on. She planned a weekend away in Napa. He agreed, then canceled last minute. A work emergency. She nodded, smiled, and hung up. Her hands trembled. She knew something was wrong, but not what. He hadn't hurt her, not outright. But his absence felt louder than any argument could. She started replaying moments, wondering what she'd missed. He returned days later, flowers in hand, saying he missed her. She didn't ask for explanations. She just let herself believe it was still real. But doubt lived in the pauses between their laughter, in the way he flinched when she reached for his phone, in how he never quite looked her in the eyes when he said, "I care about you." And somewhere inside, she began to brace for something she didn't yet have the words for. She found the photo by accident. Tucked between pages of a book in his living room, a woman's face smiling beside Ethan's. The same woman whose name had popped up on his phone weeks ago. Same sharp eyes, same soft smile. On the back, a date. 3 years ago. Lila held it without breathing, the silence heavier than truth. When he came back with coffee, she didn't hide the picture. She placed it on the table. "Who is she?" He froze, eyes flicking from the photo to her. He sat down slowly. "Her name was Anna. She was my fiancée." Lila waited. "She was my patient too. Diagnosed with a congenital heart issue. I missed something on her early scans. She died before they caught it." His voice didn't shake. It was practiced, measured. "There was an investigation. Settlement. I left the hospital, the state. Started over here." She said nothing. He looked at her like he was preparing for impact. "I never told you because I didn't want it to affect how you saw me. I didn't plan to feel anything for you. But I did." "You lied by omission," she said, steady. "You let me fall for someone who was hiding everything." "I didn't lie," he said quietly. "I tried to bury something I didn't know how to carry. I didn't expect you." She stood. Her heart didn't race, it sank. "You never gave me the truth. You gave me comfort. There's a difference. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did." He didn't follow her when she left. At home, she replayed everything. The distance. The late nights. The unsent messages. She hadn't imagined the cold creeping in. She'd just ignored it. What hurt wasn't the past. It was being denied the choice to accept it. If he'd told her from the beginning, maybe she would have stayed. Maybe she wouldn't. But he hadn't trusted her with that decision. She cried once. Not loud. Not for long. Then she called her assistant, canceled the next day's meetings, and went to bed. Days passed without contact. He didn't chase her. She didn't reach out. It wasn't about punishment. It was clarity. He had treated her like someone fragile, someone who needed protection from the full story. And in doing so, he'd broken the very thing he claimed to care about, trust. She thought about the way he used to look at her, how his walls came down one glance at a time. She remembered how she'd imagined a future with him. A quiet one. Safe. Honest. But the honesty never came until the damage had already been done. And now, all she could do was accept that even beautiful beginnings could hide broken foundations. She deleted his number, but didn't erase the memories. Some things are meant to be remembered, not repeated. 6 months later, Lila stood in her gallery again, stronger, sharper, and quieter. The pieces on the walls hadn't changed, but she had. The nights weren't easier, but they were hers. The silence was no longer hollow. It was space she'd filled with herself. She didn't speak of Ethan often. When asked, she called it a chapter, and left it at that. She hadn't tried to replace him. She hadn't tried to forget. She simply rebuilt. She ran in the mornings, ate slower, laughed more honestly. Her doctor said her heart was steady. She smiled and said, "So am I." One evening, her phone buzzed with a link from a friend. A medical journal article, authored by Ethan Cole. A personal essay buried within a clinical report. He wrote about medical error, about fear, about human limits. He didn't name Anna, but he spoke of loss, accountability, redemption. She read it twice. Not with anger, not with longing, Just understanding. He had finally spoken the truth, publicly, bravely. Not for her, but for himself. That mattered more than apologies ever could. Weeks later, at a fundraiser for local artists and mental health programs, she saw him. Across the room. Alone just like her. He noticed her, paused, then walked over. They greeted each other with quiet familiarity. No awkwardness, just weight. The kind only shared history can give. He told her she looked well. She told him the article was brave. He thanked her, said it was overdue. They spoke for 10 minutes. Not about the past, not about feelings. Just two people who had once been something undefined and deep. There were no questions, no hopes implied. Just presence. Before he left, he said, "I'm glad you're doing okay." She nodded. "I am." He didn't ask for another chance. She didn't offer one. They parted without promises. Without regret. That night, Lila returned home, kicked off her shoes, and poured herself tea. No tears. No ache. Just peace. She didn't need closure. She already had it. In her strength, in her solitude, in her ability to stand exactly where she was and not wish for a different ending. What they had was real. So was what broke it. And now, what remained was the quiet knowing that she had survived it, learned from it, and kept her heart intact. Not untouched, but whole. She didn't look back when she went to bed. The book with his notes still sat on the shelf, untouched. She hadn't thrown it away. She hadn't needed to. Some things aren't meant to be forgotten or fixed. Just honored for what they were, and left behind, gracefully.